Let's get more insight with Brian Becker. He's the executive director of the Anti-War Answer Coalition and the author of Imperialism in the 21st Century. So what do you think is the motivation behind this independent UN inquiry? What is it supposed to do? We heard punishment, but at the end of the day, what would that punishment look like?
Not much, except perhaps more bad publicity for the Saudi government. The UN rapporteur will make the report in June, as your previous report mentioned. It leads to a growing narrative that the Saudi royal family, in fact, routinely violates human rights, civil rights, people's constitutional rights with impunity. The gross and grotesque killing of this columnist, this dissident, who wasn't really a fierce opponent, but really just had moderate criticisms of the Saudi government in the Saudi consulate in Turkey. It's a point of outrage around the world. The UN report, the UN rapporteur report, will highlight that.
So Saudi Arabia won't extradite anyone to Turkey. It had its own trial, punishing in its own way. Is that not enough?
Well, I mean, it all depends on where you're sitting. For the Trump administration, it seems to be enough. But let's remember that the U.S. and the Saudis have a special relationship, and that relationship is premised on several factors. One, of course, is the Saudis buy U.S. military weapons, as Donald Trump said. As many as $110 billion have been pledged over the next 7 years. The same amount was pledged during the Obama administration. But even more importantly, the Pentagon has uniformed officers from the U.S. military embedded in every branch of the Saudi military in what's called the Joint Advisory Division. And they together make all the decisions about weapons procurements for the Saudi royal kingdom. Those weapon procurements then go back to U.S. defense contractors. So there's an intimate connection between U.S. military defense contractors, the Pentagon, and the Saudi royal family. I think that's decisive here.
So what has this Khashoggi murder done to Saudi Arabia in the region? And what are the implications for the United States, as our correspondent mentioned?
Well, I think Mohammed bin Salman has a firm grip on power. Of course, anyone who's approaching this investigation with maybe an objective faculty or some degree of skepticism would say, how is it possible to have a premeditated murder in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul without the highest levels of power giving their assent to it? But that said, Mohammed bin Salman retains power. From the point of view of the United States government, in a way, it's immaterial about what actually happened to Khashoggi. The question for the U.S. policymakers is how to retain the U.S.-Saudi relationship. It's a business relationship. It's a military relationship. It's also a geostrategic relationship in this resource-rich part of the world, the Middle East.
And we can't forget about Turkey in all of this. I mean, Turkey has been involved in recent interactions with the United States regarding what's happening in Syria. And it seems that Turkey is really driving a lot of what's happening with this inquiry.
There's no doubt. I mean, without the Erdogan government's deliberate plan to basically roll out the investigation, kind of providing information drip, drip, drip in a way to keep it alive, this investigation would have died a long time ago. This reflects the division within the Middle East between the Turkish government, led by Erdogan, and the Saudi royal family. It's a question of who will control and dominate politics throughout the Middle East. It's not simply about Turkish-Saudi relations, but their position within the region. Both are maneuvering to be the dominant player. You can see that with Erdogan's positioning within Syria. Yes, what we have right now is a competition between Erdogan, between Turkey, and the Saudi royal family. As a consequence, Turkey has been able to maintain interest in this investigation. Otherwise, as we know with the 24/7 news cycle, things go fast, they disappear. Turkey's keeping it alive.
Great insight, Brian Becker. Thank you for that.
My pleasure.